Welcome to the Tonight Show. I'm saying that because we'll go back. I have a lot to ask you here. I'm so happy that you are here. There's so much that I have to ask you. First of all, well done. Well done on The Jinx Part 2. It is... I went into it going, what more do I need to know? I don't need to know any, but the first one was so good, mind-blowing. What? And there's more, and there's more, and there's more, and these characters and everything. And then at the end of every episode, you do this secret little thing where you just make me want to watch the next episode. Something gets dropped, you're like, oh, and by the way, also this. And you're like, what? And then it's just so well done.
So that's how we felt when we were making the show.
Let's talk, the Jinx was about a millionaire, Robert Durst. Part 1 became this giant sensation, 2015, where it ended up, the show helped solve a huge murder case.
Yeah.
Can you explain who he was and how you started doing this?
Sure. Bob Durst was a guy who had always fascinated me. I grew up in New York. He had been accused of multiple murders over many years, but had always kind of skated. You know, people didn't really know how to pin him down. He's a very wealthy guy. He was a guy who had tremendous resources at his disposal. And I think people just never wanted to really make the move to prosecute somebody who would have that kind of ability to fight back. And over time, there were 3 murders, right? He had helped his wife disappear in 1982, this beautiful girl who he had married. 18 years later, the police take an interest in that case again, and they say maybe we should take another look at the case of the missing girl. And his best friend, Susan Berman, a woman in Los Angeles, becomes a person of interest, somebody who might have known what happened, so the police go to talk to her. She's found murdered. So 18 years later, there's a second murder in the vicinity of Bob Durst. And then 9 months later, as if things weren't strange enough, a body washes up in Galveston, Texas, the dismembered corpse of an elderly drifter named Morris. And the police look into that, and somebody says, well, yeah, Morris, he did have this friend, this older woman who was a deaf-mute woman who lived in this tiny rooming house with him. And as the police got deeper into it, they figured out there never really was a Dorothy Siner, a woman, a deaf-mute woman. It was Robert Durst living in a $300 a month rooming house in Galveston, Texas, posing as a deaf-mute woman. I said, I think I have to make a movie about this guy.
And you did make the movie. And it's great, Ryan Gosling.
Yeah, Ryan Gosling plays the Robert Durst character. Kirsten Dunst plays his beautiful wife. And as we started to get ready to release that film in theaters, there was a big article in New York Times, and Bob Durst read it. And I had reached out to him during the course of making the film about him and said, well, I'd love to get your input on this. And his lawyers always said, well, you know, he wishes you well, but he's a private guy. He's not going to participate. So suddenly I get a phone call out of the blue from Bob Durst. He says, I've read about the movie. I'm interested. It sounds like you really did your homework. Maybe we should sit down and talk. I arranged for him to see the movie. He says, well, it might take me a few days to get back to you because, you know, it's very personal material. And by the way, the movie kind of shows him killing 3 people. And he calls me, you know, the movie ends at 4:55. And at 5 o'clock, I get a phone call. And he says, I want you to know I like the movie very much. Kirsten Dunst was just like my wife. It really made me feel that you understood me. Maybe we should sit down and have a conversation. And that conversation turned out to be 21 hours of interviews in which he says a lot of very unwise and shockingly honest things. And that's what formed the foundation of what became The Jinx.
So he kind of made The Jinx.
He kind of made The Jinx.
Wow. So the Jinx, you watch all these things and you go, I can't believe this is all connected. And it's crazy. It's so well done, by the way, down to even the sound editing. Everything you thought of, everything. That Nathaniel Rateliff song at the beginning is awesome. Everything, that little spider crawling in the wet, it's so good. Everything is well, tickety-boo, down to the last detail, well done. It's really great. The last episode, you got it. You got him. And you go, dude, I got this move that's going to show that you're guilty, because there was a letter that was sent to the police. Susan Berman's found murdered. And there's a letter that was sent to the police that says cadaver.
Correct.
Police.
There was this famous note that became known as the cadaver note. The killer who had killed his second victim, Susan Berman, the best friend that I told you about, who was a witness to what happened to his wife, whoever had killed her had sat down in her house and written a note that said, 1527 Benedict Canyon cadaver, and had sent it to the Beverly Hills Police. And Bob Durst had always said, well, I had nothing to do with that note, and I feel sad that my poor friend Susan Berman is murdered, but obviously it has nothing to do with me. And during the course of our investigation, which took about 5 years, we discovered a letter that Bob Durst had sent to Susan Berman, and it was identical. It had the identical, not only the identical address, 1527 Benedict Canyon, it was in the exact same handwriting, many little quirks in the handwriting that made it clear it was written by the same person, down to the misspelling of the word Beverly. He had written the word Beverly, B-E-V-E-R-L-E-Y, with an extra E.
So you showed him this.
Yeah.
You go, this is the cadaver letter, and this is a letter that you wrote.
Yeah.
Do you see the similarities?
Yeah.
And you can kind of see his face go like,
yeah. I mean, his reaction to that was like, you say somebody has a tell, maybe they twist their ring or something. This was all tell. He starts burping and he starts rubbing his face. He never thought that anybody would put these two things together. He probably didn't remember having written the second letter to Susan Berman. So when we showed it to him, I said to him, I put these things in front of him and I said, so you wrote one of these, but you didn't write the other. And he said, yeah, I wrote the one to Susan, but I didn't write the cadaver one. So I showed him this without any of the context. And I said, can you tell me which one of these you didn't write? And there was a long pause, and he said, no. And at that point, I thought, we've got what we came for, right? We needed Bob to react to this. Now we have something we're going to bring to the police, and he's going to be stopped from murdering anybody else.
but wait. Then you get the craziest gift of all, the weirdest, most unbelievable, shocking scene ever. You finish the interview, you got the thing, we're done with the documentary, bye-bye, take care. He goes, all right, he goes to the bathroom, his microphone's still on.
And we didn't know that anything was happening other than that he had just had this very physical reaction. He was obviously very disturbed. But I played it very cool when that happened because I thought, well, I probably need to maintain a relationship with him. And if I say to him, well, now I know for sure you're guilty, we're not friends anymore, right? We've been working together for 5 years.
Oh, yeah.
So I thought, well, the police are gonna now take it from here, but I may need to talk to him. I may need to film him again. And I certainly don't want him to leave the country, which he's very capable of doing, right? He's got all the money in the world and he's got lots of resources. So I thought that I would play it cool when he did that.
Yeah.
And then he goes to the bathroom and we're out there kind of buzzing, me and the crew. And I note now, as I look at it in the footage of that day, the sound guy has his headphones off.
So he
They're
can't
hanging,
hear.
So he doesn't understand that Bob is still talking to himself in the bathroom. And by the way, Bob talks to himself. He told me that. He always talks to himself when he's alone. And so I don't know anything about what's happening in the bathroom.
The show doesn't know anything. The production doesn't know anything.
We go on, we give the evidence to the police. We keep working to finish the show and get it on HBO. And we don't know whether Bob's going to get arrested or not. We think he probably will. One would think he would based on this evidence. And 2 years later, an editor is cleaning up audio tracks so we can deliver the show to HBO. And she looks at the waveform on the editing system and she sees, okay, here's where Bob goes in the bathroom, and then there's nothing, and then there's a little squiggle. What's the squiggle? So she mutes the other audio tracks and she plays just the squiggle and she hears him say, there it is, you're caught. And this is what he says moments after I've just confronted him with those two pieces of handwriting, right? So she screams. She immediately runs into my partner Zach's office, and she says, you got to hear this. And Zach says, wait a minute, I was there. He was in the bathroom for like 6 or 7 minutes. Let's go pull out the hard drive that has the other audio. Let's see what else he might have said in the bathroom. And of course, then I come in and we all listen, and one of the things he says is, killed them all, of course. So this is just such a shocking moment.
Yes!
Yeah, it was.
Wow!
It was a crazy moment.
So that happened. That's the first season of and it's so worth watching if you haven't seen it. And I called you or your people and I said, you please come on the show, and you booked the Tonight Show.
Yeah. We weren't going to do any of this, kind of entertainment-y thing, but we thought, well, honestly, this is just, You know,
Yeah.
I know you a little. You're brilliant. I love the show, and I thought, well, maybe we should get more people to watch the show. We didn't know that Bob was going to get arrested. We thought he probably would, but we didn't know when.
Yeah.
But actually, the police and the district attorney's office in L.A. knew what was in the last episode. So the night before the final episode of The Jinx, knowing that he had already made plans to go to Cuba, where we don't have an extradition treaty, so he could have gotten himself to Cuba and been gone, they said, we're going to arrest him. They never told us that, but they said, we're going to arrest him before he flies the coop. We're not going to want this to be on television.
And you can't go on The Tonight Show.
And they call me and they say, hey, we noticed in the TV guide there, that's not happening.
I think you might be the only guest ever on our show that was booked and then had to be excused because you're a witness in a murder trial.
I hope that's a distinction that I can hold for a long time.
Yeah, me too. So part 2 of The Jinx, I go, what more is there? And man, you are just so brilliant at this. You go through the trial. You go through his friends that are keeping his secrets. You go to his best friends that his gang that he was hanging out with. And these are characters that you can't make up if you had the best imagination in your life. There's no way that guy, Nick, who started a country porn genre of music.
You know that genre, country porn?
A genre of music. He goes, I invented a new genre of music called country porn, called like dry humping in my Ford. I swear, you can't make it up. It's a real thing. And you play the album and he sings the songs to you. He's fascinating.
Yeah.
Everyone is fascinating.
Yeah.
Robert Durst is fascinating. His lawyers are fascinating. The defense team's lawyers, fascinating. And you just do it and everything ends. And I don't know how this ends. I have not seen the last episode. And I just got to tell you, congratulations, because I am having just the greatest. What a great job you've done. Thank you. It's phenomenal, buddy. And thank you for coming on The Tonight Show. I want to show everyone a clip. Here's Robert Durst taking the stand. That's right, he takes the stand in The Jinx, part 2. Take a look at this.
Bob gave some very unusual, and some might say extraordinarily honest answers to some of John's questions.
I did not kill Susan Berman. But if I had, I would lie about it.
I mean, who says that?
How many instances of perjury do you think you have committed during your testimony in this trial?
I would say 5.
It's Andrew Jarecki. The finale of HBO's The Jinx Part 2 airs this Sunday, and you can stream the entire series now on Max. We'll be right back with a performance from Zayn. Stick around.